I'll see you in a minute, pal. I love it, buddy.
What to do?
Oh boy, here we go, going live.
Make dreams come true.
Hello, everybody. Bob Lusk coming to you live from my studio. Pretty jacked up about that. This up until day before yesterday. Holy cow, there it goes again. I need a producer. I really do. I'm so uncoordinated with some of this stuff. Hello, everybody. Up until about 3 or 4 days ago, this little room that echoes around me here was a storage unit inside our place at LL,3, which is going to stand for Lusk Landing right on the Brazos River in Pecan Plantation, Texas. I'm going to switch that, see if I can get that glare off my face. So anyway, I am so excited to be in here, and I can't wait for Debbie to decorate it up and make it do what she does, make it look good. Tonight, I'm going to start off talking about some pictures that we put up on the Pond Boss Facebook page earlier. So if you haven't had a chance to look at those pictures, that's what you're going to want to do that. And I'm going to be talking about that and explaining how all this has happened. Okay, so now, explaining how all this. Oh my gosh! Now I got to turn off that speaker. I'm telling you. You think as long as I've been doing this, I'd know what I was doing. Tim Stewart. Hey, John Funk. Tim Stewart's from Florida, by way of New Jersey, so he may be somewhere between here and there. He could even be in California taking honeybees to the almond growers, which that might be a little early. Kenny Sanderson checking in from Kansas. Jason Nepstad from North Carolina. Good to see you guys. All right, so John Funk plugged the show, one of the Facebook pages. That's great. I appreciate that, man. You guys know the drill. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comment section. Tonight's beverage is water. We went to it. Debbie and I went to a candidate watch party last night. We're making friends out here, and one of our friends ran for county commissioner. She invited us to go to their party, and I drank vodka. So tonight I'm not going to have any vodka or wine. So hashtag Pond Boss Magazine, click like, share this to your timeline. You're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat and a Pond Boss t-shirt. Now Leanne's supposed to draw. I forgot to tell her to do that today, so we'll do it next week. Leanne, I hope you're watching. There's Billy Granholm from Illinois, McLeod Aquatics. He's starting a fisheries program up there from McLeod Aquatics, and he and I had a really, really good conversation last week. If any of you guys ever want to talk to me, send me a private message and put your phone number in there, and I will ring you and we'll talk about it. Michael Gray, Nashville, Tennessee. Hey, Troy Todd, Wesley Ellis. Almonds are almost done. That's cool. There's Kyle McKean checking in from Gordonville, America. Bill Russell, Alabama. Let's see. Wesley Hills from Georgia. Troy Todd tagged me today, or yesterday. Tony Stewart's putting his place up for sale. Just a paltry $30 million. I got to, I'll tell you this quick story, then I want to hit those pictures that I've loaded up today, or we loaded up today. There's Kim Moore. Good to see her from Central Illinois. We've got a pretty good Illinois contingent going on here. Back in 2005, I got a phone call one day from, I was in Syracuse, New York, getting ready to catch a plane and fly home. I'd been working for over a year on a project in upstate New York, and I spend anywhere from a week to 3 weeks a month and fly home, stay a little bit, and then go back up there. So anyway, I got a call one day as I was parking my truck in the parking lot at Syracuse Airport, and it was this lady's voice, and I didn't recognize the number. Actually, it said caller ID hidden or something. I don't remember. So anyway, make a long story short, it was the operator for Bass Pro Shops, and Johnny Morrison wanted to talk to me, which, I mean, I'd met him once before, and he said, hey, I got something I might want you to help me with. Well, that was the day he called me, and he says, hey, it was a Monday. He says, hey, Bob, is there any way I can get you to Indiana today? And I said, well, sure. How you want to do it? He says, well, where are you? I said, I'm Syracuse, New York, getting ready to catch a plane. I'm going to fly to Chicago, connect, and fly to Dallas. He said, well, let me get my flight, what do they call them, travel agent. Of course they've got a travel agent. and her name was Debbie. Debbie got on the phone and she said, Bob, where are you? I said, I'm in Syracuse. I'm about to catch United flight number 1958, whatever it was, going to Chicago. And I heard her tapping on a keyboard. And then in a minute she said, oh, yeah, here you are. You're in seat 19D. I don't even have a boarding pass yet. She knows what seat I'm sitting in. That was kind of spooky. So she said, when you get to Chicago, call my number. And she gave me her number. And we'll figure out how to get you matched up with Mr. Morris. And I said, that sounds fun. So I looked at Debbie. I said, I'll see you when I see you. And she said, yeah, you need to go do that. So flew to Chicago. I got off the plane. And I had clothes at home and it clothes up at upstate New York. I didn't have anything except my laptop. That's all I had. Take that with me everywhere. So I called the number. She said, go down by baggage claim. There's going to be a driver holding a sign with your name on it, and he's going to take you to meet Mr. Morris's plane. I said, whoa, that's pretty cool. That doesn't happen to me very often. Like that was the first, I think. And so I went down to baggage claim, and here's this chauffeur, and he puts me in a car, and he takes me, 2 miles around O'Hare Airport to the Signature Terminal, which is where the private planes fly in. And I mean, it's not 20 minutes. Up pulls this Cessna Citation. On the side, it says, gone fishing. And I thought, gee, that's pretty cool. And the door opens, and these 3 guys get out that I had met earlier. It was Jim Hagel, the president of Bass Pro Shops back then. I guess he still is. And 2 of his marketing experts. Well, they came in, shook my hand, said, hey, the pilot will be out here to get you in a minute, and we got to go look at some property. So they disappeared, climbed in a rent car, and they were gone. So in a minute, 5 minutes, here comes the pilot, introduces himself. He says, Mr. Morris and Jerry Martin are waiting on you in the plane. So I'm floating on cloud 9. It's like, this doesn't happen to people. This is just too cool. So I go up the steps of the plane, and Johnny shakes my hand and introduces me to Jerry Martin, who I'd seen him on TV because he did a whole lot of all the Bass Pro Shops hunting programs. So we climb in, close the door, take off. Johnny's getting phone calls on a satellite phone. He's talking to people, one after the other. And in a minute, he said, hey, Roland Martin said to tell you hello. I heard him tell him, hey, I'm with Bob Lusk today, or we're going to go do some stuff. So we get to altitude, and we're at altitude maybe for 5 minutes, and I feel it's going downhill. So I said, well, Johnny, he got off the phone and said, hey, where are we going and what are we going to do? He said, oh, yeah, that would be good. He said, I saw Tony Stewart at the races yesterday, and I told him if I could find you, I'd see if I could get you to Indiana today because he's cleaning out his lake. And he needs some habitat ideas and what to do with it to make it a great fishing lake. So we landed, and this guy named Sumo picked us up in a Jeep, and we drove out to Hidden Hollow Ranch, and Tony was driving a great big dump truck, one of these big articulated off-road dump trucks, and they were hauling dirt out of the bottom of this lake, deepening it. So for the next hour and a half, I held court with Tony Stewart, Johnny Morris, Jerry Martin, and the dirt guy that was in charge. And I was in charge. Johnny said, okay, tell him what he needs to do. So we started talking about habitat for that lake and what to do about it and how to make it and how to build it. And I actually drew up a plan on a piece of butcher paper and gave it to Tony because that's all they had in one of the trucks. So I drew up a plan and handed it to him. And then, this is a lot longer story. It's pretty cool. But then we jetted off and got to do some more fun stuff, which I'll save for another day because we only got an hour here and I'm 9 minutes in. And so Tony hadn't built his house yet. So after he got the habitat built, I flew back up there, looked at it, and started making a stocking plan. And then we got the lake full. He started building his house and built this gigantic house that looks just like a Bass Pro Shops with a Bass Pro Shops aquarium in it, a bowling alley, a golf simulator of some sort. Pretty dadgum cool place. And it's listed for $30 million now. So there you go. Now there's more to that story, but I'll save that for later. Pond Boss Rocks, Drew Bachman. Thank you, man. Mark Dyer, good to see Mark. He's in Nebraska. Ash Wednesday, I hear you. Mike McPherson, Indiana. James Allen, Kentucky. Oh, James, you sent me a question and I forgot what it is. I was going to answer it tonight. Leah Grunge checking in from Beggs, Oklahoma. I'm going to be up in that area. Yeah, actually, I'm going to be in Beggs March the 10th. Doug Cusick, Billy Bates. There's Billy Bates checking in. Dave Davidson, one of our moderators on the Palm Boss Forum. There's Danny Mack, Mike Cottrell, James Allen. What depth should I install? Oh, yeah. What depth should I install a digital wireless thermometer to monitor spawning temperature? 3 feet deep, 3 to 4 feet deep. That's the zone where they're going to spawn, most of them. Now, I'm not telling you that all fish spawn in water 4 feet deep or less, but I'm going to tell you that's the target zone. Water temperatures 48, 49 in South Carolina or SCKS, Kansas. Okay. Oh, the air temperature was 80 today. Yeah, that temperature is going to come up. Hey, Harrison Davis, it's spring in Georgia. Tommy Garrett, pond is dingy and haven't any rain lately. Is that due to a plankton bloom? Tommy, remind me where you are. Sumo, yeah. You know what? Now, Troy, I think you're right. I think that was his name. But they called him Sumo. And he looked like a sumo wrestler. Justin Ludwig, good to see you. So, let's see here. Okay, all right. I want to talk first about those pictures. So, if you guys look at those pictures, here's what happened. I got a phone call yesterday from David Graff, the county agent in Wichita County. He says, hey, listen, I think we're having an oxygen depletion in the pond over here. So I said, okay, tell me about it. He said, I'm here with the lady now. Her catfish are dying. And they're coming up, gasping for air. So that has to be an oxygen depletion, shouldn't it? Isn't it? So I said, no, can't be an oxygen depletion. So I'm going to take you through my thought process to begin to figure out what was going on with the fish. So I said, have you taken any pictures? He says, no, but while we're talking, I'll take some pictures and text them to you. So he started sending me pictures while he's talking to me. And the pictures that I posted today, or that Leanne posted on her today, were pictures we got from him. And so if you look at those pictures, if you can't do it now, do it later, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So these pictures, these fish that were dead had kind of a yellowy looking fungus on them. Their gills were frayed. You could tell that their slime was gone. And these fish, they were dead. They were pretty harsh. Now, this time of year, this is my thought process. It cannot be an oxygen depletion this time of year. And there's two huge reasons for that. Number one, the fish's metabolism rates are slow in cold water, so they don't have a high oxygen requirement. They don't need much more than 2.5 or 3 parts per million as it is. And as water temperature drops, its affinity for oxygen goes up. So oxygen levels are high this time of year, and the consumption is way, way low unless you're under ice. Well, in Texas, you're not. The only ice you ever see is in ice water or a glass of tea. So, by process of elimination, I knew it could not be an oxygen depletion. So I said, okay, tell me how many fish does she have? He says, she's got a lot, and they're all different sizes. I said, what's the biggest ones? He says, maybe 2 pounds. Does she feed them? He said, well, she has in the past. I said, ask her how much food she fed. And she never fed more than a coffee can full of fish food every day. Well, a coffee can full of fish food is about 2 pounds, which is, that's a little more than a bag of feed per month. And for a small pond that maybe is half an acre, that's not overfeeding the fish. So I said, so one of the possibilities that we can rule out is that she fed the fish so much that the water quality deteriorated. Well, that happens when the affinity for oxygen is low, the biochemical demand and the biological demand is high, which means lots of fish, lots of plants, lots of plankton. So I said, that's not going to be it either. He said, what do you think it is? So I want you guys to tell me what you think it is. Then we'll circle back to that question. So if you want to cut out a minute, look at the pictures, come right back. That's okay with me. But we're going to talk about those pictures here in just a minute. So let me see what we got here. Doug Cusick just said that. Okay, Tommy Garrett, my pond is dingy. Is that dupe? Okay, Tommy, tell me where your pond is. Remind me of that. Justin Ludwig says bacteria. Now that's a really good choice. So let's talk about bacteria and let's rule it in or rule it out. All right. Billy Bates in Maryland says the bluegills wanted to eat for the first time this evening. Water temperatures nearing 50, man. That's about right. On the surface after a day's full sun and a few 60-degree days. Yep, that's right. Thanks for the answer. James Allen says, number 2, we had tons of filamentous algae floating in long strings the past few days. Any idea what causes that lake turnover? It is not lake turnover. It is not a lake turnover. That's not going to happen this time of year. What's going on is filamentous algae has a high demand for nitrogen. Nitrogen levels are pretty high because everything that had nitrogen consumed has died and released it. Now that the temperature is going up, the first plant you're going to see grow this time of year is going to be filamentous algae. We took the grandkids, we've got 2 grandkids here right now, we took them down to the river about an hour and a half ago, and sure enough, in a couple of standing pools, there's filamentous algae growing like crazy. You know, the water temperature there is probably in the low 50s. So the filamentous algae is because the temperature window is open and there's food. So let's talk about bacteria on this thing now. Bacteria grow exponentially when they have the proper substrate and they have food. So bacteria can suspend in the water as long as it's got something to cling to that it wants to eat, and colonies will form. Now, this time of year, bacteria grows really, really slow. You know, the thing is, when a bacterial issue connects to a fish, or a fish has a bacterial infection, it's due to a stressor. And that stressor almost every time is water quality. So the water quality deteriorates, it begins to go south, and bacteria can attack those fish and start growing on their flesh. Now, if you look at those pictures, and Tim Stewart answered golden algae, we'll tackle that one here in a minute. The bacteria would be the aftermath of a stressor. Well, with all these temperatures going up and down and up and down and up and down, those are stressors. So that could cause it. But the thing that's a little interesting in that is the weaker fish are typically affected with bacterial infections. And these fish are pretty wholesale infected and dying. You know, from everything from 3 to 4 inch long fish all the way up to whatever the biggest fish were. So let's tackle that golden algae idea. And one of the clues that I put up there showed the watercolor, it showed the fish, and it showed some water in a plastic water bottle. So I'm having them send a sample of that water to Bill Cody, who's a microbiologist, and he knows more about algae and stuff you see in a microscope than anybody I've ever met. He spends his entire life looking at microscopes at algae for universities and environmental agencies and companies that do environmental and ecological studies and things. And I'll have him samples from time to time. Billy Bates, seeing filamentous algae forming, when should I start treating some of it? You can go ahead and do it now if you want. Once it starts to grow, it's in its window and you can hit it. Okay, James Allen and I are seeing the same thing. You probably are. Yep, there's Christopher Aguilar, Boudin King from Lake Charles, Louisiana. Okay, so now let's circle back to golden algae. Golden algae is a toxic form of algae that grows in salty water, fresh water that's salty. So its window opens at about 1,500 parts per million up to maybe 2,300 parts per million. Much more than that, then it's too salty. Much less than that, it's not salty enough for the golden algae to grow. So I started asking him, where'd the water come from? He said, well, she fills her pond from the irrigation ditch. So in that part of the planet, there's an irrigation ditch. There's a Lake Kemp feeds Lake Diversion, and Lake Diversion is a small diversion lake to collect water from Lake Kemp for irrigation purposes. You know, as a matter of fact, I cut my teeth in the fisheries business on that irrigation ditch way before golden algae was an issue. We never saw it back in 1980, 81, 82. So golden algae could sure be a possibility. So let's kind of figure it out. So I said, she fills her pond with the ditch. He said, yes. So I said, when's the last time she ran water? He said, just before they close the ditch, because they turn it off, to let it dry up, the whole irrigation system. They do that like in late October, November, and they don't turn the water back on until March to irrigate with. So I said, the pond looks like it's dropped from the picture. She said, yes, it has. It's probably dropped 4 feet. And I said, ask her if it's dropped that much since November. And she said, no, it's dropped that much since September, but they just didn't add any more ditch water in it, irrigation water in it, to fill it back up before they turn the water off. So through process of elimination, I started thinking, okay, so if let's say that pond has dropped 4 feet and it's, say, 8 or 9 feet deep at its deepest, over half the volume is evaporated since September. And that means everything that wasn't water has doubled its values. So and I know that ditch water is salty, that irrigation water has sodium-based salt in it. So now I'm thinking, you know what? That has to be golden algae. And so when I looked at the pictures a little more closely and I saw the yellow tint, the pigmentation, the color of the water, I am 100% convinced that's golden algae. So I had him send a sample so we can see the algae counts. How many per milliliter? Is it 10 million? Is it 30 billion? And I want to know that just so I can have a reference point. But those fish died from golden algae. So what happens is golden algae it lives in a lot of places across the country, but in a normal circumstance, that stuff is outcompeted by the good algae. So if the temperature's right and the nutrient levels are there, there's enough good, healthy algae that can outcompete the golden algae. Now, it gets a little tricky because when cyanobacteria, blue-green algae, starts to grow, it can outcompete the golden algae as well and all the native algae. So when the question a while ago, somebody said could it be bacteria? Probably not, because the temperature is a little cool. Cyanobacteria typically is not growing in water temperature in the 40s, and that was the water temperature. So now, through process of elimination, I know it's not oxygen. I'm convinced it's not water quality deteriorating. I'm convinced it's not blue-green algae, and I look at the fish and they're tinted yellow, and the water's got a tinted yellow to it. And I said, is there an odor? He says, it smells musty. So I said, okay, there you go. I'm convinced. So what happens is when the golden algae count gets high enough, the fish breathe it, it attaches to their gills and causes their gills to begin to clog up or begin to hemorrhage a little bit. And they end up suffocating. And they suffocate not because they're running out of oxygen, because they can't take it up. So not only does it kill them, it kills anything with gills. It'll kill crawfish. It'll kill insects. It'll kill, water dogs. Anything that has gills, it'll kill. And if the turtles don't leave, they can die from it, because they can absorb it through their skin as that stuff begins to break down, deteriorate. And I've actually seen turtles float up dead in ponds and lakes that had golden algae in it. So he said, what can she do? I said, she can't do anything about it. If you go in there and you treat that golden algae with something that would kill it, then all of it's going to die at once. It's all going to just break down at once and releases all of its toxins, and then the toxicity level is going to skyrocket. So the only thing she could possibly do is flush fresh water in there. And now with so many fish that are dying and suffocating, the odds are that she can't get enough fresh water in there fast enough to dilute it, dilute the solution to pollution is dilution. Well, that holds true with this too, temporarily. So you get the salinity count down, temperature goes up, that stuff's going to go away by itself. And it may be gone in a week, I don't know. But we're going to study that and figure that out and see what's going on with it. But I am convinced that's golden algae, and that's how that stuff works. So there you go. There's Travis Smith. Boudin man, he's ready to get outside and waits for the time to change so he get outside. Yep, we spent the day outside. It was a great day. Okay, do bluegill and or golden shiners eat largemouth bass eggs? If so, how much would you estimate? There's no way to know that. It depends on how many golden shiners and how many bass eggs. You know, bluegill will try to eat them, but the Big Daddy bass, that's part of what he's there for, is to run those things off. You know, Big Daddy bass meaning 3/4 to 1.5 pounds. Typically, they're the ones guarding the nest most of the time. But yeah, they would eat them if they can. You know, if the golden shiners outnumber the bass, they can do it. But the bass are pretty dadgum fierce and ferocious when it comes to guarding that nest. If you ever get a chance to see that, just sit and study. It's pretty fun to watch. And I would estimate, I'll tell you this, let's do it this way. If they ate largemouth bass eggs, which they love to eat largemouth bass eggs, let's say they ate all of them. So what? I mean, how many baby bass have to survive each year to keep the dynamics of that population moving? Whenever fish reproduce, nature's objective is to replace that adult or those two adults. That's nature's mission, you know, and it's part of our fun job is trying to help balance that mission, you know, which is not easy to do. Like our friend Cleon Allman used to say, sounds easy, does hard. Billy Bates says, large bullfrog population, detrimental, beneficial, or no impact to the fishery? Well, I'll tell you this. When you say large bullfrog population, I'm presuming you mean numbers, big numbers of bullfrogs. When you see big numbers of bullfrogs, you don't usually see big numbers of fish, or you wouldn't see big numbers of bullfrogs. They would eat them. So where bullfrogs typically live, there's nothing that's going to prey on them. And I'll tell you something really fun. And part of my, hey Travis, tell your dad, tell him Palm Bob said happy birthday, buddy. That's cool. That's cool. So, with bullfrogs, when I first moved to Whitesboro, that was in 1984, and by then I knew I was going to be in the recreational fisheries business. I'd started managing ponds by then. Had a really good client down in Laredo, Texas. I'll tell you about that someday. And I started really soaking it in about the different species of fish and how they interact together in fishing lakes. That was when I figured that was going to be my gig. I'd already been doing it, started kind of doing pond management stuff in 1983. Actually, that's not true. I started stocking lakes and ponds with fish in 1981. So I saw where there could be an opportunity with pond management by about 1983. If people were going to buy the fish, they wanted to take care of them. The state of Texas stopped giving away free fish in 1980, so the timing was about right for old Bob. So when I moved up to Whitesboro in 1984 from down south, I started off Wichita Falls and Danbury and then North Texas, and I lived up there up until we moved here. So I had a hatchery outside of Whitesboro that had leased. Actually, I went to work for a guy, and then I leased it. And there were a couple of ponds, man, that bullfrogs were just everywhere. So two of my little nieces were at the fish farm one evening. I said, girls, you know what? It's getting dark. Let's get a Q-beam light and go see if we can catch some frogs. So I had one of those spring-loaded gigs, you know, on the end of a pole where you could hit a frog with it and then clamp around it and grab the frog. Well, we went out, and I don't know, we probably saw 20 frogs, and we captured 10 of those things and stuffed them down in a sack. And then when we got back under a light where I could clean them, I like to use catfish skinning pliers, and just pull the skin off and gut them and then snip the head off of those clippers and cook the whole frog. The front legs, the back, and the back legs. So one of them that we had caught, as I grabbed it, I felt something hard in the stomach. And I put it in the bag, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to see what that is when we get up here in just a little bit. And then caught another one, and it had something hard, but it was shaped different. So when we got up there, I dropped the tailgate on my pickup, reached in the bag, pulled out a frog. I found the one that had the hard round thing in it. And started skinning it, you know, cutting his head off and all that, opened his guts up. And a brand new little bitty baby red ear slider about that big around fell out of that frog's belly on its back. And I'll be dadgum if it didn't pop its little head out and it was still alive. So that frog had just eaten that that turtle, and my little niece said, "Can I have it?" And I said, "Sure." She said, "I'm going to name it Jonah." And I thought, oh my gosh, how appropriate is that? So she took that little frog that just came out of that belly of a bull. Took that little turtle that came out of the belly of a bullfrog, and she named it Jonah and took it home. And I think she raised it up to about 4 or 5 inches. It got too big. She turned it loose in the creek. So Jonah's probably still living well 40-something years later. 39 or 40 years later. Well, the other one that had something hard in it, I cut it open. It had 2 crawfish in it. 2 crawfish that they weren't full grown, but they were crawfish. And then the rest of them had small fish in them. So they'd been catching, that was a hybrid sunfish pond where I had stocked some male bluegills and some female green sunfish that had reproduced. And those dadgum frogs were eating the fish. So the question is, are they detrimental, beneficial, or no impact? If the fishery is balanced, they're beneficial because you have another animal that's living there healthy and you can enjoy the sounds at night. Detrimental, if they're in big numbers, then there aren't a lot of fish. If there are none of them, it's irrelevant. But if there's a lot of them and you're trying to establish a fishery, that could be a little bit of an issue because they're going to eat some fish. They're going to eat insects, they eat turtles, crawfish, all that. So there's your answer for that. All right, so now, hey, you guys know the drill. Hashtag Palm Boss Magazine, click like, share this to your timeline. You're eligible for drawing for a Palm Boss hat. Palm Boss Magazine, folks. $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year, and that date's gone soon. Debbie and I had a great date last night. We waited to election day to go vote. So we got down to the polling place and looked, and there was no place to park. And it had been that way all day long. So we got out, went in. They said, well, it's an hour and a half wait. Well, we didn't take our phones in. And we talked for an hour and a half, standing in line so we could vote. And we met new people, made new friends. It was really, really, really fun. It was good. We liked it. That Friday night date's probably going to, I guess it was a Tuesday night date. That's going to last us a while because it was good. But $35 a year, get all kinds of nuggets that you can learn from. Also, I want to tell you about Purina Mills. I love those guys. They make outstanding fish food. And I wouldn't tell you that if it wasn't true. I have grown giant bluegills on Purina Mills Aquamax Sport fish food. I've grown some really nice feed train bass on their fish food. Hybrid stripers on their fish food. They've got outstanding fish food. Texas Hunter feeders. Great customer service, great products. They've got some new products you need to know about. They've just launched some fish habitat stuff. And they're outside the box. You know, Mossback is the leader in that industry, and there's some other ones. You'll see American Fish Tree check in here from time to time. Texas Hunter is one of the sponsors of this show, and I got to help road test some of their products and just give them some feedback on application and how good it is. And it won't be long until we're going to be shocking my son's pond when we get the electrofishing boat. We're going to go check it out. All right, so, and Easy Docks of Texas, David Schneiderman. He's a good friend of our show and Palm Boss Magazine. Okay, let's see here. Harrison Davis actually by accident caught a bullfrog with a rod and reel. Yeah, on a night crawler. Yep, I totally believe that. I mean, those things are pretty dead cool. There's a great big old full moon. Okay, you guys are having a conversation. Love it. I have a video of a bullfrog on my pond eating spot fin minnows. Totally get it. Totally get it. Frank James, I noticed you called me today. I was with grandkids all day long. So I'll be ringing you back tomorrow, buddy. Chad Roberts pulled some 12, 13-inch year 3 perch out of the ice this winter in my 1 acre pond in Ohio that shocked the hell out of me. I suspect they wouldn't have a high reproduction rate. Assuming that, how often would you recommend restocking them to keep exactly what I have going on now? Frank James, it's Texas Hunter fish habitat. And I don't know if they've got it on their website yet or not, but there's going to be some pictures of some of it in the March-April issue of Pond Boss, which just now went to the printer, by the way. We are late because we did the resource guide. Chad, going back to that, your perch should be spawning soon. I would expect them, if you've got substrate for them to lay eggs on, which is going to be like, just envision a pine tree, a Christmas tree, something like that. They lay these ribbons, these kind of translucent white ribbons that just full of eggs all over something that sticks up like that. So if you've got them in there and you didn't stock them, they probably were reproduced in there. Now, if your reproduction rate is low, and you can verify that, then if you want to stock them back in. Stock them in at 20, 25 per acre, and buy the bigger ones that you can, if you can. All right, so now let's see here. Y'all throw some questions at me. There's Chris Blood. Chris Blood, hey Chris, if you don't mind, put up a link where people can look at the Texas Hunter. I think you call it maybe Texas Angle. I've got to learn more about this stuff because it's all brand new on the market. People are asking about how can they look at the fish habitat that you guys have designed. So check that out. Yep, Leah's getting a bid from Easy Dock this week. They're good. You know, if you're looking for, if your pond fluctuates up and down, a floating dock's a good choice. Now, some of the things I like about Easy Docks is they're prefabricated where you can mix and match. You can, if you tell David what you're looking for, you know, we want a place to put jet skis, he's got that. If you want something to hold rods, got that. You want a dock box to store your stuff in, got that. If you want it to be 8 feet wide, 10 feet long, going out and where it tees off, he can do all that because all that stuff snaps together, and then you can anchor it where it can rise and fall with the water. So he can, I don't know, I haven't seen him on here yet tonight, but if not, he will be. Oh, and somebody said they wanted to see, look at that, there's Bruce Condello. You're looking younger. Either you had a facelift or you're treating less duck. Oh boy. Okay, so now Harrison's asking Tim Stewart if he owns a crematory and a funeral home. Well, the way the honeybee business treated him last week, he might want one of those. Hey, Bruce, good to see you, brother. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm not treating a whole lot of duckweed, and my face hadn't been lifted. It's just filled out. It won't be long till it's not, though. Of course, I've told you that before. We'll see, right? Hello, Jacob West. Charlie Kaplinger, I have algae that just appeared today. It's kind of early for this, isn't it? You know, it is, but it's really not. When that water temperature hits that temperature, you know, of the low 50s, middle 50s, that stuff's just going to start growing. And that's the way it works. And when the temperature window opens, it's going to walk through it. Oh, one thing I was going to tell you a while ago, last week there were several people that wanted me to show them around the house and show what Debbie's done with it. So I'm not going to do that during the show, but what I am going to do is after the show is over, I'm going to go off, stay off for about 2 minutes, go back live, and if you want to look around and see what Debbie's done inside this house with cedar and rock and the paint and all that, she's got an eye for this stuff, and with as much as this costs, she might need to be hired by somebody out there to help you do this. All right. Yep, there we go. Yep, there's going to be an ad. That's right. Check. Chris Blood's got that. He's got it. He's telling you what's going on there. Yeah, there's I think you got some brochures. So basically what Chris is saying is contact your dealer. And like Billy Granholm, if you're not a Texas Hunter dealer, you need to be. So how do you deal with stubborn pond owners that want to stock fish that will cause problems or not thrive in their pond? Example, pond owner, 6.6 acre pond, average depth 3 feet, is persistent wanting to add northern pike or tiger muskies to their pond. Well, I'll tell you exactly how I handle that. Because most of the time, somebody's convinced them to do something wrong. So me, at my advanced age now, which I probably started doing this when I was 40, I would say, okay, who told you that would work? Well, my good friend over here, he's a bricklayer, and he told me all about it. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to come lay your bricks and let him take care of your fish. You know, if somebody says, well, hey, I've been feeding dog food to my catfish because my friend down the road says it's cheap, it's good, and let's feed it. So I said, well, what do you feed your dog? Fish food? You know, these fish foods and these things that we tell people, we're giving them good advice. So what what I would tell somebody now in this world, I say, okay, you've asked me for advice, I'm going to give it to you. And you're either going to follow it or you're not. But you're not going to hold me accountable for any results if you don't do what I'm telling you to do. Now, if you do it and it doesn't work, man, I'll let that sit on my shoulders and we'll figure out what happened and I'll work with you. But if you want to do it that way and that's okay with you, then I'm going to sell you those fish, but I don't want to. But you're not, I don't want to hear from you 3 years down the road if it didn't work. So, or in your other choices, you know what? You're fired and do it nicely. If I'm giving you advice and you don't want to follow it, then you don't have confidence in what I'm telling you. You need to find somebody else that can do this and give you confidence that you need. Go look at Bob Lusk on Facebook. He'll tell you. Okay, here we go. Throw me some questions. We got 20 more minutes to go. And I do want to circle back and go through a thoughtful process for analyzing fish kills. Let's do that. Oh, let's do that. Look, there's David Schneiderman. I was hoping you'd be on. We're plugging you a little bit, and looks like Leah's got a bid from you. I'm going to be up in that neck of the woods on the 10th. Not that matters. I got another place to go look at a pond. So let's talk about fish kills. Fish kills this time of year in the south or southeast are not typically caused because the water chemistry has gone bad. It's something else. And fish kills this time of year are rare. And, like this case we were just talking about, that's golden algae. I'm confident that's golden algae. What could be some other cases? Some other cases could be some fish that were undernourished going into the fall. The water temperature goes up and down in a shallow pond. And this is especially true of largemouth bass and channel catfish and old geriatric bluegills that might be 7, 8, 9 years old. So if you're going to evaluate a fish kill, most fish kills are water quality based. It all starts with the water quality. You guys that have watched this show for a long time, or even for a short time, my number one big deal is happy water. If your water's not happy, nothing else makes any difference. So if the water chemistry is going up and down, let's say the pH is 5.5 and the alkalinity is 0, or say the alkalinity is 20, something like that. The pH is going to rise and fall every day with photosynthesis if you've got any kind of a plankton bloom. So the pH is going to rise and fall because the alkalinity is going to go from 0 to 30 to 0 to 30 to 0 to 50 or whatever every single day. So that in itself is a stressor. So if you can make sure that the water's got the right alkalinity, which is 40 parts per million or more up to about 180. If it gets to be more than 180, that's too much. It's hard for nutrients to load enough to create a good plankton bloom if the alkalinity is too high, because that alkalinity, calcium carbonate, will bind with phosphorus. Calcium phosphate, gypsum, is formed if you've got too much phosphorus and the alkalinity, if the alkalinity is high, the calcium will release and it will bind with phosphorus. There's all kinds of little chemical things that affect the biology of the water. So that's number one. So the very first thing I try to figure out to analyze a fish kill is, what is it? And it all starts with the water. And it starts with some impetus, whether it's temperature. This time of year, it could be temperature driven. In the summertime, it's going to be because there's so much biomass in there that it's affecting either the chemistry of it or the oxygen level. Say, for example, if you've got a pond that's 80% covered with bushy pondweed, you get 5 or 6 cloudy days in a row where photosynthesis can't occur, you're going to see oxygen rates plummet. Another common case is when channel catfish especially are fed well and you don't eat any fish. You got to eat some fish. If the standing crop gets too high and you got so many fish that you're feeding and they're giving off more waste than the water can process, they're going to be swimming in their own septic tank. And that at some point that can kill fish. You could pretty well bet that every fish kill started because something bad happened with water. So I go through that process of elimination and kind of break down and see what it is. And then what can they do to fix it? Some fish kills are partial. Some are 100%. That one with the golden algae, that will be a 100% fish kill. They can't do anything about it. Okay, let's see here. Looks like David and Leah are having a conversation. All right, let me see here. Oh, good. Here we go. Bob, without dredging and say you had no bottom diffused aeration, is there a way to deal with muck? Billy, most muck is dirt that's washed in. Now, some of the muck is organic. The way that organic matter breaks down is to be mixed with the water enough with an oxygen interface that bacteria can do what they do and break it down and release its nutrients. So without aeration, it takes a long, long time, because right there at that water muck interface, the biological oxygen demand is so high that it's sucking the oxygen out of the water faster than the water can produce it at that interface. So they go anaerobic, and they can only break that stuff down at a rate that's just really, really slow. So to speed it up, you can add some microbes to speed it up, but most of those microbes are aerobic, So that's why aeration is a significant method to help break down organic matter. Now, when you break down the organic matter, let's say you got 2 feet of muck, and say 30% of that's organic. That's probably over half the volume, because that stuff's squishy, right? And it's expanded. So as you break it down, you're going to gain some depth in the water. You're going to release nutrients to the water, which is going to promote a plankton bloom that can be sent down to your neighbor when it rains. So there's the answer I'm going to give that. What should a pond bass weigh after 3 years old? Christopher Aguilar. Well, if that's a bass in upstate New York, it's probably 10 inches long. If it's in South Louisiana, it ought to be knocking on the door of 5 pounds, maybe a little better. Jason Nebstad, I was thinking about ordering some copper-nosed bluegill from a local hatchery. Should I be concerned with genetics or anything? Well, ask them and see what they tell you. And then with the resources of photography on this internet, you should be able to find good copper-nosed pictures. Now, I've seen copper-nosed bluegill that don't have that golden color like the ones at Richmond Mill Lake. They're a reflection of the color of the water, So if it's a reputable fish hatchery and they tell you they're copper nose, you either got to believe them or not. And when you look at them, if their tails are blue and they don't have a lavender band going across their noses when they're mature males, by the way, and they don't have kind of orangish or copper colored fins, tail fin especially, then odds are they're not copper nose. Now, there's some hatcheries that grow copper nose bluegill that are kind of like F1 Florida bass. They're a cross between copper nose and like northern bluegills. And those perform pretty well too. But they should be telling you straight up the truth. And if you don't trust them, don't buy the fish. And in today's marketing world, all the good fish hatcheries have got Facebook pages and websites and photography and all that, and testimonies. I mean, I don't know that I've ever looked on Yelp to see what anybody's saying about a fish hatchery, but who knows? Maybe, there may be some reviews. I don't know. I don't know how that works. I've never thought about looking at that. James Allen, is there a spawning table of fish species versus timing or temperature in one of your books or magazines? When will the new book hit the website? The new book is at the printer. Well, actually, it's almost at the printer. I have got to pick out about 10 more photographs, get those to Rob. He's going to plug them in because we have the space. Then the printer will have the whole thing and be ready to print it. So I think Leanne's getting ready to put it on the website now, but we don't have the books in house yet, but we're not far from it. We're in the short strokes. On the spawning table, I don't think I've ever done that. I've got it in my mind though. I mean, if you've got yellow perch, they spawn first. Northern pike, they're going to spawn in there somewhere. Next, crappie are going to be next. Then it's going to be the other sunfishes like pumpkin seeds, bluegill, red ear sunfish, largemouth bass. The sunfish species like that are going to spawn about the same time. which, let's do it this way, 48 degrees to 52 degrees is going to be yellow perch. Right after that would be northern pike. Then next up would be bluegills and bass, and they're going to start from 58 to up to 70 something in that window. And those two species spawn in cycles of the full moon. Now, red-eared sunfish are going to spawn between bluegill spawns when the temperature's a little bit warmer. Golden shiners are going to be spawning about that time where the temperature's in the low 60s to mid 60s. Gizzard shad are going to spawn about that time. Threadfin shad are going to start spawning at about 66 to 72 and warmer. And they do it early in the day at dusk. Daylight, just dawn. Let's see what else are there. The last ones to spawn are channel catfish and blue catfish. They're not going to spawn until the water temperature's in the mid 70s. So, like in Texas, that's the end of May, 1st of June. And it's really interesting because as I was trying to figure all this stuff up with fish, it started clicking with me that all these different spawning windows give the fish the opportunity to not cross and not interbreed because their temperatures are a little bit different. And it's also interesting how the bluegill are spawning at or about the time, maybe just a little bit ahead of bass. So there's baby bluegills, baby minnows coming off the nest about the time the baby bass are coming off their nest, so the food chain's developing. So it's pretty cool to have that knowledge. I don't think I've ever put that in a magazine, and I have to go back and look. I don't remember. I can remember a lot of the ponds and lakes I've looked at, but I cannot remember stuff that I write, and I don't know why I can't. Jason Nipstad from Fayetteville, North Carolina said, do you know of hybrid strappers can be shipped in the mail? If so, we're going to find them. It would not surprise me if they do that. Now, one thing you can do is call your local supplier and ask them. And I know in North Carolina, you can call Foster Lake Management and they can tell you whether or not they can ship hybrid stripers from their source where they buy them wholesale from. I would ask a local supplier. I think that's what I would do. All right, let me go down here and see what else we got. Looks like we got more comments. Mike McPherson, I have Sea Clear from last fall that I purchased from Matt Rail. Does it lose its strength over time, and is it safe to use now in my Indiana pond? Started sealing filamentous algae as soon as the ice melted. I don't know why you can't. If it froze, you might need to look at the MSDS sheet. Actually, that's what you need to do. Read the material safety data sheet, read the label, and it's going to give you some ideas as to what you can do. Look at there's a testimony to Easy Doc. Kirk Swallow, do you know about an app to design a pond? I do not know of an app to design a pond. And I'll tell you why. It's because every site is completely different. Kirk, you can go design a pond in South Louisiana and go 40 miles away from it to the east and maybe build it similarly, but it's still going to be designed different because the dirt changes. So, there's over 50,000 known soil types in the United States. Not all of them hold water. Some areas you build a dam to dam up a creek. Some areas you excavate and build a levee and pump it full, So there's really not an app at all for that. Not at all. Trip Homegrain, our resident comedian. I've known Trip a long, long time. Are fish good to eat? If you fit in their mouths, they will eat you. So yes, they are good to eat. Odds are that they probably not going to eat you or me, Trip. Not in freshwater. Okay, Pristine Ponds. Here comes Dustin. Hello, everyone. Pristine Pond Solutions here. I think you got a referral from Pond Boss yesterday. Since you're advertising, by golly, he's going to be in the resource guide, folks. Go Billy. No, not Billy. Pristine ponds. That's Dustin. There's Billy. Most chemicals are good for 2 to 3 years if they're kept in a temperature-controlled environment. There you go. There's your answer. I don't know about Sea Clear. Schneiderman's checking in. Look at that. He's making a sale right here as we go. Good stuff. Mike McPherson, will 1-year-old yellow perch breed their first spring? You know what? If they're big enough and they develop eggs, the answer to that's yes. Bluegills, for example, 2.5 inches long, they can reproduce. A largemouth bass, 1-year-old, it can reproduce. If it's grown fast and it's maturing sexually, it can breed after 1 year. So yes, they can. All right, Dustin is asking me about water clarity issues. Murky water, muddy water, what causes it? How can you clear it up naturally? Also, does grass carp intentionally add it into a pond cause these issues? No, grass carp don't do that. Grass carp, they're vegetarians. They're not going to stir around the mud. I'm going to circle back to that question. James Allen, moon-related spawning, would that be full moon? Yes. So some fish spawn in a full moon, some spawn in a waning moon, some spawn in a new moon, some spawn in the dark of the moon. And you know, the fish that we love to pay attention to, like bass and bluegills, they spawn in cycles of the full moon. You know, and so what happens is when they get ready to spawn, depending on the size of the fish, not all the eggs mature at the same time. So the eggs that are mature, that are ready to go when the moon cycle comes in and the temperature's right, that fish is going to go spawn those eggs. And in the case of a largemouth bass, for example, she might not spawn all of them. So the next batch finishes developing and gets ripe. And the next phase of the full moon, she'll spawn again. And she might do that 3 times depending on how big the fish is and what the spawning sessions are like. How the temperatures are, and is there nest availability, and you know, has she been seduced well enough by a good male? You know, and I'm saying that a little bit literally, but that's what happens. If she doesn't like that male, she's not going to reproduce there. So now let me go back here. Look at that. Now Ron Arduan knows somebody. Holy cow, Kirk. All right, I want to go back to pristine ponds, Dustin. Water clarity issues, there's two reasons that water is turbid because of dirt. One is because there's something physically stirring it up. That could be common carp. Like in that lake we met you on, I would bet you $1 to a donut that water murkiness is due to common carp. That lake is loaded with common carp, and one of Ron's jobs, part of his mission, is to see if he can't get a bunch of those carp out of there. He's getting ready to start working on that here in a few days. So that there's physical methods in there. Another thing is certain types of water with certain kinds of minerals dissolved into it are magnetically clinging to microscopic colloidal clay particles and suspending them in the water. Now, a natural way for you to clear muddy water where it's physically stirred is to get rid of the problem. That can be gizzard shad, that can be common carp. Those things can take it out. They can keep that mud suspended. You know, but we start looking at things like gypsum or balancing the cations and the anions. You do that with gypsum, aluminum sulfate, but you got to be careful with that stuff because it's tricky. It can cause some issues. You know, and so if it's suspended colloidal clay, then you got to figure out how to eliminate that source. Or how can you magnetize those little clay particles with aluminum sulfate or gypsum or, you know, another mineral like calcium carbonate sometimes and make them clean together. Scientists call it flocculate. That's a big word there. And it makes them heavy enough that they can sink. There's no guarantee that it won't resuspend, by the way. Okay, so let's see here. It is 7:29. Ron, if there's not sufficient shoreline vegetation for threadfish to spawn in, what else can be used to help them out? Coastal Bermuda hay can do that. Speaking of hay, there's Drew. Landscape Pro has an app to show a picture of what water can look like in an area. However, the boss is very correct. Yeah, there's your answer right there. Now, you can go on Google Earth or MapRight or something like that. You can draw in what the shape of a lake's going to look like, and you can measure the watershed size so you can figure out how big a lake needs to fit in a site. But there's not really an app to design a lake. Now, there is an app. There's a CAD program that will help you design a dam, but you got to get the numbers to plug in and it's theoretical to the extent that you can't really calculate the cost because you don't know about the dirt. You have to know about the dirt to do that. All right, Ron needs to speak to Dustin. You guys friend each other. You guys were at that lake at the same time when we all met. So you guys check it out. All right, hey, I'm going to kind of wrap it up. You know the drill. Hashtag Pond Balls Magazine. Click like, share to your timeline, and you're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Balls hat and a t-shirt. We will do that next week. I will send a note to Leanne right now and talk to her about that. So now I'm going to go off live, and give me just a couple of minutes to go turn the lights on in the house. Anybody that wants to tour the house and see what Debbie's done with it, because I've had about 5 people ask me about that, then that's what we're going to do next. And I'm just going to go live, turn the camera around, walk through the house that I'm comfortable that I know she won't mind, even though I see laundry laying on our temporary kitchen table. I probably won't show you that, but we'll go live here in just another couple of minutes. Give me about 3 or 4 minutes to get the lights on, and then I'll go live again for those of you that want to look at the house. So, thank you very kindly. Hey, there's Trana Madonna. Glad to see Trana checking in. Love Trana. You might want to see what Debbie's done with this house. So, I'll come back live in just a few minutes. Stephen Barton wants to know when his personal invite. When this house is finished, we're going to invite a lot of people, and you will be at the very top of the list, amigo, because we're just now getting to the point we can live in it, and until Debbie gets other things like she wants them, we ain't having company. All right, so I'm going to tell you thank you very much for watching. I'm not sure where I'll be next Wednesday, but I know I'm going to be hanging out with you. So until next Wednesday, adios.